Hello, this is Faison, Richa, Jess, and Serena. Of the 4 major types of tissue in the human body, our project focuses on connective tissues.
Connective tissues make up much of the body and are the most abundant tissues weight-wise. Some of the general characteristics are that they bind structures, they provide support and protection, they serve as frameworks, they fill spaces, store fat, produce blood cells, protect against infection, help repair tissue damage, have an abundance of extracellular matrix, and can usually divide.
What sets connective tissue apart from, let's say, epithelial tissue is that connective tissue cells are set farther apart than epithelial cell tissues. In that extracellular space, there is a complex network of macromolecules that make up the extracellular matrix. The extracellular matrix consists of fibers and a ground substance that binds, supports, and provides a medium through which substances can transfer between blood and cells.
The categories of cells in connective tissues are fixed and wandering cells, named because they either stay in one fixed position or they move about. The mixed cells are fibroblasts and mast cells. Fibroblasts are most common and are star-shaped. They secrete proteins in surrounding tissues. Mast cells are also very large but are located near blood vessels so they can secrete hormones into the bloodstream. For example, they secrete heparin to prevent blood clotting or histamine to promote allergic reactions. The wandering cells is the macrophage, which uses phagocytosis to clean particles off of tissue surfaces like a vacuum to prevent infection. Macrophages are first white blood cells, which we can talk about later.
There are 3 types of connective fibers. The first one, collagenous, which are white fibers, hold structures together. These could be like ligaments, which connect bone to bone, or tendons, which connect bone to muscle. They are thick threads of the protein collagen. Collagen is a major structural protein in the body. White fibers also have great tensile strength. Tissues containing these fibers are called dense connective tissue. They appear white, which is why they're called white fibers. Tissues containing little of these is called loose connective tissue. The second type of connective fibers is elastic or yellow fibers. These are made of spring-like proteins called elastin. Elastic fibers provide elasticity to parts that stretch. Elastic fibers allow parts to be easily stretched and deformed and will not lose shape when force is removed. An example of these are vocal cords and air passages. The third type of connective fibers is reticular fibers. These are thin fibers of collagen. They form supportive networks within tissues. An example of these is the spleen.
There are 2 categories of connective tissue. They are connective tissue proper and specialized connective tissues. Connective tissue proper includes loose, adipose, reticular, dense, and elastic connective tissue. Specialized connective tissue are cartilage, bone, and blood tissue.
Loose connective tissue is also known as areolar tissue. They are made up of fibroblasts and create very thin layers to fill the gaps between skin and the organs beneath it, and the space between muscles. For example, this is the tissue that keeps the dermis tissue of the skin attached to the subcutaneous fat layer beneath it.
Adipose tissue is also called fat tissue and is made up of specialized cells called adipocytes. Adipocytes absorb fat droplets and enlarge or secrete fat for use and shrink. As the adipocyte increases in size, they join together to form the adipose tissue. Adipose tissue lies underneath the skin as subcutaneous tissue. It cushions joints like the knees and surrounds organs like the heart and kidney. Each person has a predetermined number of fat cells, so although a person can lose weight by making the adipocytes shrink, he or she cannot reduce the number of cells naturally.
Reticular connective tissues are made of fibers, functions as a framework, and is located inside of internal organs. Reticular connective tissue is made up of very thin fibers of collagen and bind together to create a 3-dimensional web to provide a strong framework. It creates a foundation for organs such as the liver, spleen, bones, and lymph nodes. Reticular connective tissue is rarely found alone because its function involves providing a net for other tissue cells to form around.
Dense connective tissue is made up of tightly packed collagenous fibers and a few fibroblasts. There are two types of dense connective tissue, regular and irregular. Regular dense connective tissue has little blood supply and has slow repairs. This tissue surrounds the ankle, which is why it takes time for sprains to heal. Irregular dense connective tissue is made up of randomly patterned and thicker fibers to bear tension from all sides. The dermis of the skin and the tendons and ligaments are all irregular dense connective tissue because they need to sustain pulling and stretching.
Elastic tissue is made up of yellow elastic fibers that attach different components like vertebrae of the spinal cord or parts of hollow organs like the heart and airways.
Cartilage is a more rigid type of tissue that provides support, framework, attachments, and protection for underlying tissues as well as structure for developing bones. Cartilage is made up of collagenous fibers that embed themselves in a gel-like substance. Cartilage heals slowly and doesn't divide frequently because it lacks sufficient blood supply. The three main types of cartilage are hyaline, elastic, and fibrocartilage. Hyaline cartilage is found at the ends of long bones as growth plates that harden as we age. It's the most common form. Elastic cartilage is more flexible and makes up our ears and pharynx. Fibrocartilage is very tough and absorbs shock. It is found between the vertebrae of the spinal cord, the knees, and the pelvic girdle.
Bone tissue is also called osseous tissue and is the strongest of all because of the calcium minerals found in it. It's the most rigid connective tissue, and its hardness is due to mineral salts. It is also capable of forming blood cells in its hemopoietic tissues. Hemato refers to blood and poietic means to make. The bones are important to our movement and structure as neither is possible without the rigidity of the bones. They also serve to protect vital organs as the rib cage does for the heart, lungs, and liver. Bones are constructed around its bone matrix. This is where the bone cells called osteoclasts create very thin circular layers called lamellae around the capillaries and tubes called central canals. As the osteoclasts mature, they become hardened osteocytes, and each small circular formation of bone cells around the central canal is called an osteon. Because the cells are so close to the blood supply, there is quick transport between their gap junctions. This is why bones heal so quickly.
Another type of connective tissue is blood. As we mentioned before, the components of blood are formed in the hematopoietic tissues, which are found in the red marrow of long bones. Blood is composed of three major parts: the red cells, white cells, and platelets. Red blood cells transfer oxygen to other tissues. If red blood cells are malformed, as in the disease sickle cell anemia, where instead of round indented bodies they are crescent-shaped, they cannot transport the oxygen quickly and effectively to keep cells alive. White blood cells are part of the immune system and fight infection. For example, phagocytes are white cells that use phagocytosis to engulf foreign bodies. If the immune system is overactive, we have allergies to substances the body sees as a threat but aren't. Platelets are cell fragments that respond to injury by clotting to stop blood loss. As skin continues to heal, those cells are pushed to the top until they fall off as scabs. When there are missing clotting factors, as in the sex-linked disease hemophilia, platelets are unable to bind together, resulting in blood loss.